What was something your family did that you didn't realize wasn't normal until you did it in front of others? My mom is a yawn yeller. When she yawns, you can hear it from anywhere in the house. One time my sister had a friend over and we were in the basement. My mom yawned upstairs and my sister's friend asked, "Was that a coyote?" My mom yells when she sneezes. In order for her to stop sneezing, she has to basically sneeze really loud, kinda like achoo. One time my brother had a friend over and he thought something was going on outside. It was my mom sneezing in her room. You sorted German words in casual conversation, which as a child I assumed were English until I got confused stares from friends. My family has been in the US since 1902. My dad's family does it both ways. He thought a lot of Italian words were English. Then he visited Italy and discovered a lot of his Italian words were just English with an accent. Sleep after the meal during holiday get-togethers. Just the men. The women exchanged gifts. We would all go into the living room and watch football and kinda doze. No big deal. Did this once at my girlfriend's family Christmas and evidently I buried her, or maybe offended someone. Either way, I was the only one asleep while everyone else was energetic and conversing lively with family. I was woken up by girlfriend with an angry tone asking why I was asleep during the party. I was comfortable, relaxed, and we just had a lot of food. Made sense to me. Damn, that definitely seems like something that would be perfectly normal in some families and rude in others. My dad jizzed on my siblings and I a lot. He was born in Iran, so he had a little bit of a language gap even as an adult. And what he would do to mess with my siblings and I is he would use his finger and thumb to punch the tiniest amount of skin on our wrists. And he would call it jizz because I think that's what he thought the sound of that was, if you could get close enough to hear it. So the scene occurred plenty of times where my brother, sister, and I would be running away from him in the house, pleading not to get jizzed on. Years later, someone explained to me that the noise Iranians think bees make is jizz. So therefore, my dad was buzzing us, not jizzing. Thankfully, had a similar thing in my family growing up. My dad liked to have little nicknames for us. My name is Joe, and it got turned into Jodo, and then that morphed into Dodo. My sister is Jill, and her nickname was Dilly. After a while, to match the rhyming of my nickname, he started calling her Jildo, which then mixed with the D in her Dilly name and turned into Dildo. My dad was completely oblivious to what he was saying, and us kids were too young to know what the word meant. Until one day, when I was about 14 and my sister about 10, my dad called for her by saying "Hey dildo," and then paused, got a bit of a funny look on his face, then said quietly to himself, "I think I'm going to have to come up with a new nickname for her." My mom and I have had this inside joke where we go, "Don't talk to me," or "Don't even look at me" in response to stupid shiz. I don't remember how or when it started, but I've been doing it since I was a wee kid. I didn't realize how odd it was until I said "Fine, don't talk to me" then in response to my mom telling me I couldn't get a video game I asked for, and a woman in the aisle with us got offended. She pulled my mom aside and told her I don't need to be talking to her like that, and she needs to teach me how to respect her. My mom explained that it's a joke that we do, but she doesn't think the woman believed her. My husband and I joked like this too. My friends get really uncomfortable when I roll my eyes and say "I don't even like you, I want a divorce," and he says "Good, you smell like wet garbage in flea market." Apparently it's not normal for your parents to openly and graphically discuss their sex life with you, and it's definitely not normal for your parents to have multiple partners younger than you. Edit. Since so many are asking, my parents didn't start this behavior until I was an adult. When I say the partners are younger, I mean they're sleeping with college kids while I'm in my mid to late 20s. Oof, that's awkward. Saying "goddammit" after sneezing. That was an interesting day in first grade. We say "shut up." Can be awkward with new people. Tends to get laughs though. Everyone in the family, extended family included, likes each other and gets along. One boyfriend commented that my family was weird because everyone got along, no more of fights, screaming and yelling each holiday, bringing up decade-old grudges once or twice a year. Like he has never met his uncle because his dad and uncle hate each other too much. TBH, this is weirder to me than the guy whose dad jizzes on him. That my mother would scream and yell every single night in her sleep. I legit thought it was a normal thing. My mom has nightmares. Doesn't yours? Edit. Given the comments here, maybe a larger conversation needs to be had about why people have nightmares. Holy chiz. I dated a girl that had those and it not only creeped me out, but she would start clawing and punching. Smoking indoors. I didn't do it, but my GF at the time had a veritable panic attack when we had my mother over for dinner. It was the first and only time my mother came to visit. I was born mid-70s, so I remember smoking in malls, planes, hospitals, etc. Both my parents were non-smokers, which made them unique enough, but still every time someone came over, they'd pull out these giant ashtrays for their guests. Such a different time. People are absolutely baffled that my parents are still friends after separating, and underscore that my dad and my stepdad get along so well. They even kept living together until mom bought her house. Dad kept the original house, and when my stepdad came to visit from his home country, he'd stay at home too. My parents hold no ill will towards each other at all, and have always gotten along well. They just grew into different people, and realized they wanted different things out of life. Their houses are 10 minutes apart, and they invite one another over for dinner all the time. They still help each other out when one of them needs something. They still do activities together, and they'll sometimes drive together to come visit me too. Many of my friends whose parents have separated have shared what amounts to horror stories about it. It sounds like a lot of separations are aggressive, violent even, and definitely not as chill as my parents' separation was. Seriously, the hardest part of all this for me is deciding whose house I'm staying at when I visit home. Lol. My parents are similar. They're not exactly friends, but they had a fairly amicable divorce, and after a few years my mom even started inviting my dad to all the family holidays, because she didn't want him to be alone on the holidays. My husband, who has one of the most vindictive exes I've ever heard of, was absolutely shocked that my mom would even let me let my dad into her house when she wasn't home. And it hadn't ever really occurred to me that you wouldn't be able to trust your ex not to rob you when they were picking up your child. It seems far more common for parents to be very overtly cautious / controlling of their kids' activities. Not that my parents let us have free reign, but they trusted my brothers and I to walk around the neighborhood, usually in big groups. Bedtimes weren't really enforced after like age 10, and never on weekends. Ironically, later I was pretty often the safe friend to the more cautious parents, because I turned out real boring. I was probably a bit of a special case, because I've always had a touch of anxiety, but I think having my parents' trust kind of removed the rebellion of it. Edit. Well, apparently it's not as uncommon as I thought. Hello other boring free range kids. Also, I've been told the original expression is free reign, but I think both versions work, so reign stays. Same. I had no curfew once I was 12 or something, and I turn out boring as well. My friends' parents loved me because I was such a good kid. Flush the toilet after peeing. We tried to save water, so we basically peed until someone took a dump. Then one day I went to a family friend's house and freaked everyone out because I didn't flush. Edit 1. Forgot to mention that we were a family of 5 with one working toilet, and my dad jizzes like 3 times a day. Edit 2. Our bathroom was on the 2nd floor, and it had a window. This thing can work until your bathroom gets filled with pee smell. Not recommended. Edit. Thanks, guys. Now my top voted comment is about the stain of pee. Apparently it isn't normal to do grave rubbings. When I was little and went to graveyards with my family, sometimes they would bring paper and crayons to rub old dates and names onto them, like a leaf rubbing. I was reminiscing on this once with my friends and realized that these rubbings weren't a normal thing to do once they all gave me horrified looks. It's a hobby that was very popular in the 1970s. Maybe one of your parents did it as a kid. My parents were hardcore penny pinchers when I was growing up, even though they both had decent jobs. Our water usage, among other things, was controlled and timed, which led to me washing dishes in a certain way that minimized the number of times I opened the faucet. Over the years, my parents' tedious money saving methods began to fade, but a few things didn't, our dishwashing method being one of them. One night, a friend of mine invited me over, and I stayed for dinner. I offered to help with the dishes. It only took a few dishes before my friend was like, "What are you doing? Why are you washing in dirty water?" He then proceeded to turn the faucet wide open. I felt so damn wasteful at that moment. It felt like I was watching dollar bills go down the drain. I was expecting his parents to go off any minute for being so wasteful, but nothing happened. They probably thought I was weird for using the dirty water. This method of washing dishes was normal for them, yet felt so taboo to me. I was 13 at the time. I want to know the difference between how you and your friend wash dishes. The way I did them growing up, we filled a dishpan with soap and really warm water. All the dirty dishes went in there. We'd scrub them with a sponge and move them to the other side of the sink once they were nothing more than soapy. Then we'd rinse them all off in running water. If the suds disappeared in the dishpan, we'd dump out the water and refill it. Or 3-compartment sink in a professional kitchen would wash with soapy water in one compartment, rinse with clean water in a second compartment, and sanitize with sanitizing water in the third compartment. I've used water with some bleach added. So washing in a tub of water and then rinsing under running water at home doesn't seem bad. Now, I'm only washing a few things at a time, just feeding myself, and I rinse under warm water, scrub with a wet soapy sponge, then rinse under warm water again. If I were washing dishes for an entire family, though, that would waste a ton of water. 3 out of 4 members of my immediate family have the same condition, where we grow benign tumors in our brain and spine, so conversations about brain surgery and muscle wastage and loss of function are common. I knew it wasn't normal, but we kinda keep forgetting how most healthy people react to a guy losing the ability to move my toes. It's annoying. Is there any cause you'll have been able to determine? That's very interesting, and kind of sad for everyone's toes. But at least there's some humor there. My dad forces us to say I love you. I say I love you quite forcefully now, and I don't mean to. When people say they love me, and they aren't my family, I stutter and kinda go blank. I think, "Chiz, what do I say? How do I say it without it being forced?" I was so used to ending phone calls with my children and my BF with "I love you" that one day I called in a pizza. When I was finished placing the order, I told the guy "I love you." He answered back and said, "Yeah, okay." I felt so dumb. Oh, definitely casually telling my friends sexual conversations that my mom and I had. Turns out my mom was oversharing my whole life and I never knew it was weird. Edit. When I found out it was weird and talked to her about it, she said in a very sad voice, "But you're the one person who really understands me and who I can talk to about everything." She made it a solid year of trying before she slipped up and told me a story about how my stepdad fingered her in her sleep. Mine would try to guess who masturbated and openly called out my brother at the dinner table for being caught jerking off. Keep in mind I was 7. My mom made up words. I didn't know this until I was an adult, out in the world saying fake words and having no idea. Wankijord means when you've been laying or sitting down and your pants need to be adjusted. Goo goo baby, small baby that still makes cooing sounds and probably still wears a diaper. Just the memorable one. There are so many. I used to call my dress shoes clippity clops. I asked my friend's parents why there was only one mum. Thought everyone had two. Not the smartest of moves in the 80s. AWW. That is the sweetest. I've actually had 4 mums so far. My mum's sister who partly raised me, dad's ex-wife and dad's current wife. I was raised for the first 10 years of my life by my mum and aunt, so having only one birth parent was normal. I had friends who had 2 parents, but dads were like guests/ghosts in the house. Dads did nothing to my young eyes apart from eat and sleep. I grew up with the assumption that dads just weren't needed. Later had a shock when I discovered that some dads are lone parents and not all dads ignore their kids and don't contribute to the family. We had a bag in our deep freezer where we kept kitchen scraps until garbage night. It was pretty genius, but creeped some of my friends out when we would raid the Hot Pockets stash. My aunt in Texas had a 5-gallon bucket in her freezer of scorpions. They had a lot of them down there on their property, and every time she would catch one she'd throw it in the bucket with the rest of them in the freezer. I never could get a straight answer why she didn't just kill them and throw them in the trash. Turns out that sarcasm is considered really offensive by a lot of people. For my father it was basically the default mode of conversation, and I was 23 years old when someone finally explained to me that, no, this is not how it works for most humans. My dad and I speak really sarcastically, but it's always a joke and we both understand that. A guy I used to date insisted I was constantly being mean, but I didn't think I was being mean at all. He said it clicked once he met my dad and saw the way we spoke to each other. I mean, there's a lot of ducked up chiz on my end, but here's something pretty specific. Having dinners as late as 9 PM and just sitting there not talking the entire time we ate. This has went on since I was around 9 or 10. Chiz absolutely ducked me up when I started seeing my boyfriend and his happy family eating at 6 and being really excited and eager to talk about their days. It makes me think I'm just living with roommates rather than parents. Edit. Wow, I did not expect my comment to be so relatable. It makes me feel a bit better knowing I'm not alone with this. Thanks everyone for sharing. And to clarify a couple things, my parents specifically are engineers that work from home and basically have their own schedules 24/7. As long as chiz gets done, aka they have pretty relaxing jobs. So there's really no excuse for their behavior and bad time management as nearly 50-year-old adults. I was wildly jealous the first time I ate with a family who talked at the table. Now that I'm all grown up, I try to be that way with the family I made, but I still find myself staring at clocks while I eat sometimes. Stealing food from each other's plate at dinner time. Once we had finished our meal, you would pick at the slowest ones, usually mum's. Wasn't until I did it at my now wife's house that I learned no one else did this. Joe, I doesn't share food. A family towel. We had a towel rack, and we'd just hang our towels. It wasn't designated to anyone in particular, and every few days we'd just replace the dirty towel with a clean one. In college, a friend came to visit our home. When she very politely asked why we all use the same towel, it just never occurred to me that that was weird. That is definitely an interesting one. What if someone just used it before you, and it's all soggy? How often would you guys want the towel? I'm the eldest of 7, and we are a super close-knit family, and always have been. Even when I was 1 and my first sister was born, as far as I was concerned she was my little baby doll and I loved taking care of her. We went through a lot as a family around the time the youngest 2 twins were born because of medical difficulties. So I used to sometimes write little letters of encouragement to my siblings, telling them I loved them and to hang in there. They could reread them anytime they needed it. This slightly predates laptops/phones being ubiquitous. My sister and I went to a sailing camp late high school, and we ended up on different boats. We were expecting a working sail school, but a lot of the other kids were apparently expecting more a cruise. They were mostly really snobby rich kids from New York and they were kind of assholes. They didn't want to lift a finger to clean, cook, or actually keep the boat moving in the right direction. Had a few scary experiences as a result. But my sister is pretty sensitive, and apparently she was being outright bullied on her boat. One of the older boys was literally calling her thunder thighs, and she was by no means overweight, though it would be just as bad if she were. Apparently she cried every night when she was alone. We didn't see each other very often, and only had a few minutes to hang out when we landed on islands. She didn't tell me specifics the first time we stopped, but I could tell something was off, and she wasn't having fun. So when we were back on the ships, I wrote her a note of encouragement. Someone asked what I was doing, and I casually said writing my sister a love note, and he was like, oh, you in love with your sister? And it was the tone of voice where you've just realized you're talking to an insane person and you're trying to stay cool to ease how insane they are. It was shocking and kind of humiliating, and it was so out of left field I didn't even know how to respond for a second. Especially because I'm also female, and girls/sisters can be more affectionate with each other, and it's not usually weird. I don't know why, but it still really bothers me his mind immediately went to that place, and everyone kind of avoided me slightly more after that. I was pretty over the trip at that point, so I didn't mind everyone leaving me alone. I think it's wonderful that your family is so close and caring. Some people's lives are just so devoid of love and affection that it can seem weird to see other people being affectionate. I'm sad for those folks. Respond to sneezes with a sarcastic, "You are not blessed." I got a lot of weird looks in school from my teachers. I about killed a distant family member from a surprised laughing fit. My response sent him into though. Lol. He was actually kind of impressed we had that sense of humor at our young age. I used to say bless me, damn you after I sneeze. Was not popular thing to say in front of a teacher. Take a cheers with the door open and talking to whomever happened to be standing in the doorway. Lol. AHH, the joys of the all-female household. The toilet is a no discussion zone. I don't care if there's a riot and the house is burning down. I need some peace and quiet when I chiss. No exceptions. My parents are super chill. They had the sex talk with us before we went to school, so when we were 5, they told us we are allowed to experiment, but only with their permission. My sister and I have both smoked and drank in front of them. They said if we want to start having sex, we can, but we tell them so that they can buy the condoms. If we do badly in a test, they ask if we did the best we could do. If we did, then they are proud. If we didn't, they are still not upset. If we have any problems we can talk to them. My mom has actually given me sex tips. We are not at all interested in each other, just comfortable. But when I mentioned it to my friends, they said their parents beat them if they don't do well at school. They avoid the topic of sex like the plague and barely talk to each other when they are not fighting. Damn, that is something else. The trust and openness is enviable. I'd take oversharing over disinterest any day. Are we kinda rich the inside of our throats/ears by making this noise with our throats and putting one finger in your ear and moving it real fast? Apparently this is very weird and my friends still look at me funny. OMG, we do the throat noise too. It's like my whole family does it instinctively and it annoys/freaks people out to no end. My coworker used to tell me I sounded like a whale when I did it, which was a lot because hello, allergies. When we have big family dinners, Sunday NGHTS, Thanksgiving, birthday dinners, Christmas, and just regular nightly dinner, my mom would serve us each individually from the kitchen instead of putting the food on the table and letting everyone serve themselves. I didn't realize how weird this was until being a guest at others' family dinners and seeing that not a single one of my friends' moms did this. It makes a lot more sense to let people serve themselves, other than children, as they know what they want and how much a lot more than the hostess knows. It's also a very working class way of arranging meal times. Working class families have less of a budget, so letting people, especially kids, choose how much they want to eat isn't an option. There's usually a set amount to go around, so it's given rather than taken. Not my family but my BF's. I was at their house and his parents were making dinner in the kitchen, prepping vegetables, while we and his brothers hung out in the living room. After a bit his dad comes in with sliced discs of raw potato and hands one to each of us. I was like, UHH. What am I meant to do with this? And they all go, eat it. It's a snack. I took a little bite, and it tasted just as starchy and bland and downright odd as I imagined it would. Apparently they do that every time they have potatoes. I didn't even know they could be eaten raw. The Irish, man. Weird folk. My mom snacks on raw potato slices. I have no idea why or who bestowed this abomination upon her, but it's weird as cheese. Constantly signing. My dad sings and plays the guitar. My mom was in chorus in high school, and 2 out of my 3 sisters take theater club and vocal lessons, and one of those sisters plays the ukulele. I constantly hear people walking around the house singing, and sometimes we'll do impromptu musical numbers belting out different songs from shows and movies that we like. Because of this, I've kind of picked up a habit of singing without even realizing it. My friends will tease me sometimes when we do group Discord calls and they hear me start singing out of nowhere, but I didn't realize how truly strange it was until I was at a party with some friends. I was in a good mood, so I burst into song, and they all just looked at me like I was crazy. That's when I realized that my house is like an IRL musical 24/7, and I guess that's not very common. Keep singing, brother. I would love to sing musicals all day long. My wife would murder me. I envy your musical home. Use applesauce sauce as a condiment for hot dogs. Edit. This blew up while I was asleep. Just to clarify, I'm American not German, but it's cool that people think I am. Maybe my ancestors were? The applesauce adds sweetness kinda like ketchup does. I switch the ketchup for applesauce, add mustard to balance out the sweetness and top it with chili. You what mate? To me it was normal to have parents run out in the middle of anything for fire depth calls. It didn't worry me too much until I saw a bigger farm propane tank explode as my dad went driving up towards the fire. Some of my friends asked if I was concerned about them getting hurt/killed while out on a fire call, but it never occurred to me to worry about that because they usually always came home. My dad ended up in hospital a couple times, but I've never worried about that. Now my kid or kids can grow up with that haha. My dad is a stunt man, so the hospital injuries are also common haha. Turns out other kids react with shock and tears upon hearing their parent is in the hospital with broken ribs lol. We would have a plate of sliced cheddar on the table every morning for breakfast and eat pieces of cheese as part of the meal. Apparently other people don't do that. Cheese for breakfast? Sign me up. That sounds awesome. My in-laws. Every time they come around for a meal they'll start washing and drying all the dishes afterwards. Even stuff we have next to the sink from brekkie/lunch. And if I've convinced one of them they don't need to do the dishes, the next lot to step into the kitchen will come out asking why they all haven't done the dishes yet. They're Dutch. Maybe that gives this some context. My husband and I will clear the table and leave the dishes beside the sink, put the kids to bed, then load the dishwasher. My in-laws were here for a couple months, and they would wash all the dishes by hand the second the meal was over. I kept being like the dishwasher, but they treated it like voodoo sorcery. We stored bread in the microwave. Loaves, buns, rolls, you name it. To use the microwave we would pull it all out and then put it all back. Not sure why I didn't question this growing up. That's just where the bread was kept. I do this now. If it's in the cupboard it attracts mice. If it's on the counter the cat annihilates it. Can't win. Microwave bread safe it is. This one is kind of reverse, but I still remember the first time I visited a friend's house and discovered that their dad just lived with them all the time. For context, mine showed up once a year for my birthday until I was about 9, then never again after that. Close bracket. I feel bad for you, although I hate my dad. We keep our syrup in fridge. Apparently people keep it in the cupboard. Real maple syrup goes in the fridge. Aunt Jemima or any of those mostly added sugar syrup go in the cupboard. Dancing around our Christmas tree. Not in like a satanic ritual sort of way, only during the holidays and your usual Christmas songs are sung. Did this every Christmas throughout my childhood on my mom's side. Apparently it's a Danish tradition I believe. I brought it up to my friends one time, and they thought I was insane. Seemed normal to little Omi. Dancing around the Christmas tree is a required activity on Christmas Eve. Fact. Pretty much everyone I know does it, but as you say, might just be a Danish thing. God weekend Ogdelig Jul. Having a physical fight at least 3 times a day. But we weren't arguing, kind of like playing fighting games. Keeps you in shape. Naming our cars. I have met a lot of people that do this, including my family. So you are not alone. Poop knife. I knew this was coming. We keep our trash can in our pantry. You sinner. I was diagnosed with severe asthma as a baby. They'd find me blue in the lips. My parents smoked around me until I was 8. They also stopped taking me to the doctor once I outgrew the hypoxia. My childhood was filled with suffering and shortness of breath. I thought everyone got sick like me and that I was just a massive wimp. Edit. It's hard to type on an iPad. That's not a fun family quirk. That's child abuse. Using baby wipes in the bathroom when we did number 2. I mean I never did it in front of everyone, but every friend's house except for one didn't even have the option to do so. The if he hits you, it's okay to hit him back rule. I'm Sahi, since I only have a brother. Just as long as it wasn't downright brutal or enough to have longer term consequences, that a string that lasts maybe 3 minutes, it was okay. Edit. We also don't have formal breakfasts or even lunches, just dinners, and even those can get muddled. Breakfast because we all have widely varying sleep schedules, and lunch because we don't really have that much free time around noon. I'm older than my brother, so this didn't happen, but when he was a baby going through his biting stage, my dad told me to bite him back. I did. I don't think he bit me again. Eat at our computer desks, rather than the dining room table. I came here to say the opposite. We always had family dinner every night at the dining table. Then when I was older and started hanging out at other kids' houses, I realized not every family did that. Everyone would kinda just come into the kitchen, get food, and then retreat back into the house. Weirder were families that didn't have dinner and kind of just left everyone to fend for themselves. Dinner together was for eating out in special occasions. I liked my family dinners. One of the few things my parents did right. Cook almost exclusively boxed / canned foods and nothing fresh or from scratch ever. I genuinely had no idea that other people didn't eat this way until I went to college. Friends and roommates commented on the strange assortment of boxed foods I had, like instant mashed potatoes or bags of instant soup, and how disgusting they looked. I was mortified to learn that my whole life I had been eating really gross and processed foods, all the whole thinking they were normal and real. Ever since then I make a conscious effort to always get a lot of produce at the grocery store, something we never had when I was growing up, and also to learn to make new things from scratch whenever time allows. That's a little sad tbh. I hope you're enjoying real food now. What did you think people were doing with fresh foods? Or what did you think fresh foods were when you saw people cooking on TV or in TV shows? My family eats ice cream out of glass cups. It drives my husband insane. Edit. Glad drinking cups, sometimes plastic. I use standard sized coffee mugs for ice cream. 1. It has a handle to hold, so your hand doesn't get cold or warm up the ice cream. 2. It's the right size, not too big, not too small. Eating ribs with a fork and knife. I was 17 when I found out that it is okay to pick them up and eat them with your hands. Reminds me of my friend who as a kid, he was forced to eat pizza with a knife and fork by his mum. I remember going round to his one day and was so confused when everyone was eating with cutlery. Personifying inanimate objects. If someone tells you that's not normal, they're wrong. My parents always had an open house policy. We lived in a tiny house, but friends were always welcome to drop by. My friends were always welcome to stay. The house was always full of people. Holidays, big meals with lots of family and friends. Went to my in-laws, strict appointment only. Meals are had in silence even at holidays. And in 20 years I have never been allowed upstairs, and neither has my daughter. She's 17 now and just doesn't visit them anymore because they are so weird. Husband avoids them as much as possible. I'm not sure if they are the odd ones or my parents are. I'm not sure if they are the odd ones or my parents are. They're weird, or at least unwelcoming. Whenever my mom cooks ground beef, like you do for tacos or spaghetti with meat sauce, she drains off most of the fat / grease that comes off. She really prefers to get as much off as possible, so usually she takes some paper towels and sticks them in the pan toward an edge, then tilts the pan so the grease runs down and the towels soak it up. Easy to just pick them out and toss them in the trash. I've also heard grease is bad for drain lines and septic tanks, so that makes some sense to do that instead of pour it down the sink. I've picked that habit up from her. The first time I made spaghetti at college in the dorm kitchenette, I got some pretty weird looks. Apparently folks like to keep the grease for flavor. I don't cook for myself often enough that it would make sense to keep it, and I don't find leaving it in meat appetizing either, as it gets that white fatty look after sitting in the fridge. My family does that too. We typically either put it in an empty plastic container, like a Temptation Street tub, until it's full, then throw the whole thing out, put it in the dog's food, or do the paper towel method. I was punished as a child. Not the standard put in timeout or grounded from certain things. I learned in college that a lot of people my age, 18 to 23, didn't get spanked with a belt to the point welts formed and it hurt to sit down, bars of soap shoved into their mouths after saying a naughty word, pulled down the stairs, and smacked across the face repeatedly after getting caught doing something wrong, having things thrown at them, or being called terrible names. My dad liked calling me a queer bastard. My gosh, I'm so sorry. You definitely deserved way better than this. My mom, when she is telling anyone a recipe or even instructing us in the kitchen, uses the statement, and then go grrrrrrrrrrr the tomatoes, to make a puree of it. I've grown up with it, so I find it normal. I know she means I need to grind/blend/juice it in the mixer/grinder. GHRRR being the human equivalent of the sound a mixer makes. My sister used the same format when she was discussing a recipe in her college. There were 8 to 10 people around her who just looked confused. They asked her to repeat. Then a friend started laughing, realizing that GHRRRR means using the mixer/grinder. My sister took an actual minute to realize that it's not a normal way to say grind that up. We had such a laugh when she came back and told us about the incident. We still use GHRRRR when communicating at home. When communicating to outsiders, we had to stop ourselves from using that. No, you can't just use random noises instead of words. Haha, blender go GHRRRR. Double dipping chips. Had no idea that frowned upon. My husband's aunt does that. She also makes this famous potato salad that she rants on about how amazing it is. Nobody else does, and I watched her making it, repeatedly licking the spoon as she stirs. Not something I've ever done in front of other people, but I get scandalized reactions sometimes when I tell people that my parents spank me and my brothers. Maybe it's just not as common outside of the South, because a bunch of my friends' parents definitely did it too. I know corporal punishment has fallen out of favor and that's probably a good thing, but sometimes people react like I should have been traumatized by it and I wasn't. My parents tried to spank me once. I had the brilliant idea of laughing instead of crying. Literally freaked my dad out so much he never tried it again, haha. My mum and the wooden spoon on the other hand. Whenever it was Christmas Day, my parents would always hide a pickle ornament in the tree. Whoever found it first got to open the first gift and also get a small gift, like a candy bar. We have done this for years, and whenever I tell my friends they always look at me funny. It is supposedly something that is very common in Germany. It's actually not from Germany at all, and most Germans don't know what the heck we are talking about when referencing the Christmas pickle. Go for late night walks to the Tim Hortons for donuts. So I grew up in a family full of night owls. We all prefer to sleep in the day and be up at night, and most of us can function on very little sleep when needed. I remember on multiple occasions as a kid being like 8 or 9, playing quietly in my room around midnight, while my parents and sisters watched TV downstairs, and overhearing somebody say duck. I could really go for a coffee right about now. And then getting all excited because that usually meant we'd be going for a night walk and getting donuts. I didn't realize it wasn't normal for children to go out at midnight to get donuts until I was being all nostalgic with my friends in my teens and they were like WTF. I was in bed by 7. Eating dessert any time of the day. We ate dessert like dinner, sometimes with a side of ice cream, cake, and cookies organized on the plate, like a balanced meal. Leftover cake was acceptable for breakfast the next day. Obviously it didn't happen often, but boy did we brag about it in school that day. We had a sock basket. It was just a basket of socks. None of them were paired, and they were all different sizes. The entire family just went and picked 2 random socks every day. In all honesty, it was a pretty convenient method. I still don't pair or wear matching socks to this day, and it seems so pointless to me. I do this. Life's too short to sort socks. Putting ketchup on hot dogs in Chicago. All my life I only ate ketchup on hot dogs, but if you live in Chicago that's apparently a big no-no. As a Chicagoan it's such snobby bullshit. You know how you can have a hot dog however you ducking like. Also hot dogs are ducking terrible, no matter what you put on them. The children were treated as basically kings and the older you got the less important you become. I'm 15. When I turned 12 and could potentially get pregnant, my mom began looking for boys who I could potentially get with and have 4+ kids with. Thank Duck for Planned Parenthood and coming out as a lesbian. My nephews and nieces are the top priority in every situation, no matter what. I remember when the family dog died and we weren't allowed to cry or even appear sad because it might make nibblings names sad. My 90-year-old grandmama is visited by anyone in the family maybe one a year. When I was 14 I got with this girl and I visited her and her parents and they respected me and my feelings and they said good night I love you to both of us when they went to bed and asked me if I was okay and helped their older family members. Her and I aren't together, but I miss feeling like a mother loves me. Edited for a word. I'm your mother now. Brush your teeth. Drink some water. I love you. Slapping my brother. Deleted. Until I was 16 over 17 I thought it was a normal thing to call a portable air heater a kerpierdup, which in Polish is a combination of 3 beginnings of curse words like /sf/k, for example. I realized it was my family dialect when during winter break in high school I went with a bunch of friends to the mountains and the refuge was extremely cold, so my friend and I went down to ask for a heater and I, 16 or 17 at the time, but I had pigtails and looked about 12 back then, asked the old guy at the reception for a kerpierdop. The panic look at the poor dude's and my friend's face told me I said something very wrong. Apparently, the story behind calling the heater a kerpierdop is that when I was born it was in very cold September, and, as the central heating was not running, my parents would use a huge, old wheel-less heater when bathing me. It would always fall on my dad when he tried to set it up, hence every portable heater in our family household is called after the expletives that my dad would call out. I became vegetarian very early on, like when I was 8. I hated the taste meat with a pain. How could anyone eat that cheese? Well, turns out that my parents were paranoid about food poisoning, so whenever they cooked meat or ordered it in restaurants, it was way overcooked, rubbery and chewy. I always thought that that was what meat tasted like. At 25 my GF forced me to eat a medium rare Wagyu steak. I instantly fell in love with it. It tasted so soft and silky. Edit, spellings. I grew up in a family of deep sleepers. I could sing loudly, slam the door, and talk on the phone at 2 AM, and I wouldn't get a single complaint. I've built some god-awful habits because of this. Didn't realize how rude I was when closing doors / staying up late, until I moved to college and had roommates. Sorry to my roommates Joss and Franz. Shopping with my parents, I guess. When I was a teenager, I went shopping with my mother all the time. For us, it was a good time to just have a chat while we were just bustling around. Plus my mother doesn't have a fantastic memory, so I could remember things she might have forgotten. I didn't realize it might not be a normal thing until I overheard a friend gossiping about someone and saying yeah, he was shopping with his mother, like a baby. I still shop with my mom. Gonna be 35 this summer. Talking for your pets. I do this all the time. My cat actually replies with meows. He comes in through his cat flap, goes meow, and I go hello. I think he likes the acknowledgement. I react to him, and he reacts to me. Fun detail, he has developed a special meow that tells me he has brought home prey. That way I can react before he puts it down. Also special sounds for I want food, or I need water, or I want to cuddle. Quite useful, really. My parents are very open about their sex lives. Thank the Lord mine are not. Swear like a sailor. When I was at my friend's house while at dinner, his dad said something stupid, like an opinion, can't remember the specifics, and I asked him to defend his position. He looked at me, and I'm an adult, and I don't need to. It was then I realized that people don't typically get asked to justify their statements or debate positions. But they should. People need to stop saying stupid shit. I'm an adult, and I don't need to. Not a very adult thing to say. Having 2 mums. A lot of the family friends were 2-mum households with the occasional 2-dad household. My best friend through junior school had a single mother. I must have been almost 10 when I realized that most families have a mom and a dad. Not necessarily me doing it in front of others, but going to friends' houses as a teenager and witnessing them. I went to a few friend events and birthdays as a kid, but I never really had any freedom. It was reserved for special events that were near my childhood apartment, since my dad was the only one who drove until my sister was of age. In most Asian cultures, we have honorifics and we don't call our elders by their names. Filipinos are more simplified than say Japanese, so my brother and sister were always kuya and ate kuya and ate, but so were my cousins. We also had nicknames for everyone. In my freshman year of high school, I got to hang out with loads of my friends and they all referred to their older siblings as their names. I was so confused. Where are your honorifics? Isn't it disrespectful to call your elders by their name? Hearing my friends call out for their older brothers and sisters to come eat at the dinner table with their actual name shook teenage me. It still weirds me out a little, but I'm more desensitized to it now. Have a glass of milk with every meal. Reuse paper towels. My brain was skimming and read toilet paper for a minimum and was very confused. We buy treats for family every time we leave the house. And by every time, I mean every single time. Every time I get off work, I buy a treat for my siblings to share. Every time someone in the house has an errand to run, they come back with a treat for everyone. Didn't realize it wasn't a normal thing until I asked friends to wait for me while I picked out some snacks to take home. Tasting everyone else's food and drink and making everyone else taste yours. At restaurants, the question "what did you order?" is always answered with "wanna try?" and a forkful being handed to you or "wanna sip?" while a glass is being thrust into your hand. If the whole family is together, it can take several minutes for everyone to start eating their meals because of the forks and glasses being piled up and down the table. I didn't realize that most people don't do this until after I met my husband. In his family, you do not eat after other people, and it would make me crazy that he absolutely would not let me taste his food. If you wanted this, you should have ordered it. It took me a long time to understand that wasn't being selfish and that most people think what my family does is gross. Edit. I'm so glad to hear from so many people who are sharers. I read all the replies to my husband and he is completely astounded to find out that people other than my family do this. Please continue to shove your forks in other people's face and spread the joy. Or, I don't think it's gross. I love sharing bites of food with my boyfriend anyway. Oh my, you watched until the end? That's fucking awesome, dude. Thanks for watching.